Hi, I'm Dirtbag and welcome to Metal Breakdown, the show that breaks bad metal albums. And the thing is about bad albums, it really is a matter of opinion when you think about it.
Oh sure, there are many factors to consider, such as how well the bands play their instruments, how well their songs are written, and the production of the album itself. There are plenty of other factors, but I don't want to get bogged down in the details. But an interesting note would be how the fans react.
And let's face it ain't pretty sometimes. I'm looking at you, Black Album. Who the hell keeps rearranging my record collection?
But I like to point out that with every good metal band that makes a bad record, there's going to be I'll say okay band that makes, well, a pretty good record.
Case in point, Hail to the King by Avenged Sevenfold.
Avenged Sevenfold, or A7X if you're lazy, are an American metal band from Huntington Beach, California. Formed in 1999 with 6 albums under their belts, with Hail to the King and their previous album Nightmare reaching the #1 spot on the top 200 Billboard. Now let me clear a few things up. I'm not really a fan of Avenged Sevenfold, and to make a long story short, they're good at what they do, they're just not my cup of tea. But after hearing Hail to the King was influenced by pretty much all the great metal bands, I wanted to share my thoughts.
And truth be told, I think it's okay. But maybe for the wrong reasons.
Like I said, I'm not a massive fan of this band, but I have heard a few of their songs and they're okay, not bad for modern metal. I think what really put me off them would be their fashion style, which seems like a cross between 80s glam and noughties emo. It's like something out of goth sketchbook. That and they're more tattoos than men. Seriously, the amount of ink these guys have is borderline decadent. But we're not here to talk about images from the mind of Tim Burton. We're here to talk about metal. And oddly enough, Hail to the King is a pretty metal album, as embodies all the great hallmarks of the genre.
And really, there's not much I, as a metalhead, could ask for. But despite all the booze and all the drugs over the years, I still have a pretty long memory. And I recall hearing these tunes elsewhere.
As much as I like the direction the band is going in, it feels like they weren't only paying homage to their influences, but also makes me wonder if they were emulating them too much. But every metal band under the sun has to pay respect to either Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, or Motorhead, just to name a few.
But if you're a hard rock and metal fan and you have albums between the years of 1968 to 1990, you may very well be able to pinpoint which band influenced which song. Here's a couple of examples.
I'm maintaining addiction, been known to take it too high. I got an itch with a loaded hair trigger and a one-way ticket to fly.
I cannot be the only one that thinks this is a B-side from Appetite for Destruction, right? And I'm pretty sure I can hear Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden on the title track. See, right there, come on, I can totally hear the influence!
I could show you all the songs and pinpoint them all to another band, but I don't think Avenged Sevenfold had it planned out to rip off other artists, just pay homage to them. But it feels they're taking their influences and rolling with them to the point of sounding like them. It's as if they became part of the Borg Collective or some shape-shifting alien monster like John Carpenter's The Thing. But joking aside, I honestly do feel that with all the right intentions, the bands have made a good album. but their own signature sound feels like it got lost in the mix. I think the only song I'd consider their own would be Requiem, and even then it sounds like something Dio would have recorded.
Darkest Lord, your mercy shall I gain. Straight the matching of the earth in flames, in flames, in flames, in flames.
So I guess that makes it all the better. Look, what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of 80s love when it comes to this record. So much so...
Dark years brought endless rain. Out in the cold, I lost my way.
They made a fucking power ballad. God damn it, Motley Crue! And Poison, and Guns N' Roses, and Cinderella, and Whitesnake, and Faster Pussycat, and Skid Row, and Extreme, and Warrant, and while they're at it, Meatloaf too.
But all in all, this is a band who's gone through a few changes over the last few years. Their original drummer, James "The Rev" Sullivan, passed away in 2009. During the band's time recording Nightmare, ex-Dream Theater drummer Mike Portnoy helped out, but the band soon settled with Aaron LeJay. So yeah, I can see that losing a band member could have an impact. Hell, the same thing happened with Metallica after losing Cliff Burton. But for all intents and purposes, it's a good thing to see a band carry on.
And to be honest, maybe going back to an old school sound was a pretty slick move. They even have a couple of songs with orchestral parts. It's as if they went back to Gustav Holst. Okay, maybe I'm giving them too much credit. Maybe I thought this show could do with a little bit of culture.
I may be sounding like a broken record here, so I'll try and wrap things up. Half of me wants to point out where they got their influences from, but the other half realises that these instruments have a finite amount of notes to be played. I mean, the band themselves wants to make a record like this in the first place. It's not like they got together and decided to pander to a different crowd. I can't speak for Avenged Sevenfold fans, but if they don't like this record, they've still got the band's back catalogue. To people who think they're ripping off older bands, shut up, there's nothing new under the sun. Besides, 9 out of 10 metal bands are probably ripping off Judas Priest anyway.
So this album isn't bad, it just reminds me of bands that I love. Sure, some of the melodies and riffs sound similar, but I'm pretty sure this is meant to be a sincere homage. And to think, Trivium will still always be the band that tried too hard to sound like Metallica. I'm Dirtbag, and you've been watching Metal Breakdown. Keep it metal.
Peanut butter disaster.
Groovy.